Ready to step into the world of luxury hotels? Welcome to the Hotel Leaders podcast. Whether you're an industry insider, a student of hotel management, or simply curious about the world of hotels, this podcast is your backstage pass to the heart of the hotel industry. I'm your host, Peter DeMoor. I have a fascination for the hotel industry, and over the last quarter of a century, I have studied it, been a hotel manager, and as general manager of a hotel school, have passed the torch to the next generation. Now, as part of an emerging hotel industry tech startup, I'm independent from any specific hotel or chain and able to talk about the industry with a balanced perspective and a certain level of expertise. It's time to check in. Welcome to episode 7. I have a treat for you. Today's podcast is all about the Hilton Hotels and Resorts, one of the largest hotel groups in the world. I will introduce you to Conrad Hilton, the 6-foot gentleman with piercing blue eyes hailing from New Mexico. He came to build one of the most well-known hotel empires that the world has ever seen. We will explore his 7 rules for hotel operations, how he implemented these over his exceptionally long lifetime, and how he was a trailblazer in both business and philanthropy. Hilton's legacy is a testament to the power of dreaming big, relentless perseverance, and the enduring impact of genuine hospitality. I was a 22-year-old the first time I reserved a stay at a Hilton hotel in Cairns, Australia, a gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. It was a wonderful experience, and today we'll take a deep dive into the remarkable story of Hilton Hotels. Here we go! Conrad Hilton was born on Christmas Day in 1887 in San Antonio, New Mexico Territory, into a family of Norwegian and German descent. His early life was marked by hard work and the influence of his parents, Gus and Mary, who instilled in him the values of faith, perseverance, and the importance of hospitality. Hilton's initial venture into business was helping his father run the family dry goods store, which was a success. Here's a snippet courtesy of the A&E network with links in the description.
Conrad's father, Gus Hilton, was a large man who sported a handlebar mustache. His loud and robust voice commanded attention. He owned the town's general store. He also dabbled in any legitimate business that could be profitable. If the business wouldn't come to him, Gus would ride into the mountains to find it, trading for furs and beavers, bartering for blankets and gold nuggets. From his father, Hilton learned the value of hard work and tough negotiation. But from his mother, he learned a very different set of values. Mary Hilton was as quiet as her husband was loud, as pious as he was hardy. A pioneering woman, she was the backbone of the family. Mary instilled in her son a deep devotion of the Catholic faith and a belief in the power of prayer.
By 1903, aged 15, Connie left school to work full-time for his father, but he never stopped learning. By this time, he was already 6 foot tall, a good dancer, bridge and poker player, pianist, tennis player, and a lively conversationalist. He was inspired by the book Optimism, authored by the blind and deaf Helen Keller, and saw pessimism as a sin. The next year, Gus sold a mine for $110,000, or $3 million in today's money, and the family was rich. To celebrate, Gus took the family to St. Louis World Fair. That same year, the city hosted the first Olympics held in the United States. I've attended a couple Olympics, and the excitement and optimism in the air is contagious. Connie and his siblings were beginning their exposure to a broader world, made wider when Gus moved the family to Long Beach, California, a block from the beach. But even there, Connie worked hard doing a newspaper route. In 1907, the bankers' panic and recession wiped out Gus's finances, and the family returned to their family home in San Antonio. At 19 years of age, Conrad was the eldest son in a large family of 9 children. Conrad had an idea to save the family by converting 5 or 6 of the bedrooms of the 10-bedroom family home into a hotel. For a bit of background, Gus extended the house by a bedroom at a time each time a new child was born. Much to Connie's amazement, his parents agreed to this idea, and whilst his mother and sisters provided meals for the guest, his father, himself, and brothers acted as porters and ran the hotel. Every day, Connie and his brother Carl would head across the road to the train station and meet each train arriving in the town at 12 noon, midnight, and 3 a.m. The Hilton's service was reliable. The price charged was very reasonable, so rather quickly the message spread that the Hiltons was a place to stay in San Antonio. People spoke about Connie being a crackerjack at making things comfortable for guests. Travellers got cleanliness, comfort, and great food. This would be the first hotel management experience and gave him practical skills like making beds, carrying bags, checking guests in, and receiving payments. All the things that would set him up for a somewhat unexpected future in hotels. In the modern hotel industry, it is common for you to work your way up from jobs like being a porter. And in fact, my first full-time job in hotels was as a porter for a hotel on Australia's Gold Coast. I learned the intricacies and practicalities of hotel operations before becoming a manager. When the Hilton's family hotel became successful, Connie enrolled in higher mathematics, and this was a course that helped him develop a lifelong love of numbers. Next, he served as a band manager and agent to his sister's musical band, the Hilton Trio. But this business hardly broke even, and he returned to manage his family store. But his father micromanaged him, so he looked for a way out, and because Connie had a different style to his father, he was easygoing and supportive, but retained high standards. He delegated his management role to someone else, and at the age of 25, ran to become a state politician in the first New Mexico government. His father wanted him to return to the store so much that he voted for the other candidate, but Conrad was elected as a Republican. Although he became a compelling public speaker, serving on 8 committees and introducing 19 bills, 9 of which he passed, he became frustrated with the bureaucracy, slowness, cheating, lying, and inside deals of politics. After his short political career, he developed the desire to become a banker and used $2,900 in savings and raised a further $30,000 to fund New Mexico State Bank of San Antonio. But when the newly formed board of directors met, they elected an old banker as president, freezing out Connie. He was upset, and he went back to the shareholders and gathered enough proxies to get control. But when he showed up at the stockholders' meeting, there had been a run on the bank, and all the money was lost. He believed the old man had started the run in order to prevent him from getting control. In any case, Gus arranged $3,000 in loans from out-of-town banks to save the day. And Connie was elected a vice president. In raising money, Connie said, "There is a yoke of responsibility that attached itself firmly the minute someone entrusted me with their capital." He felt this responsibility for the rest of his career. Regardless, San Antonio proved too small for a bank at that time, and Hilton was forced to close it after a year of operation. In 1917, Connie enlisted in the US Army, which opened his eyes to a broader world. He had been a very big fish in a very little pond. He headed to the officers' training command at the Presidio. He saw San Francisco for the first time and fell in love with the city, as so many others have done. Then, in Washington State, he saw serious rain for the first time. His next stop was Jacksonville, Florida, and finally received orders to leave for France. But before departing, he and his new army friends visited New York, which he found impenetrable. And he visited his married sisters, now living in Boston and New Jersey. On 14th of March 1918, Connie and his army friends sailed across the Atlantic Ocean bound for France. He was an officer during the First World War, and while he never saw battle, he was stationed only a few miles from the front and saw many overhead dogfights between fighter planes. He travelled all over France and was finally stationed in Paris when armistice was signed that November. 2 million people celebrated in the streets, and he loved the French cafes, cabarets, and the dancing. However, in January 1919, he received a telegram from his mother stating that his father had died on New Year's Day. His father was the first person in San Antonio to own a car. It was a Model T Ford. However, it skidded on the ice during a turn and rolled into a ditch, and Gus became the first person in San Antonio killed in a car accident. Conrad headed home, but much to his sadness, missed his father's funeral. He traded mohair for a while, as his father had done, but he still had dreams to be a banker. He knew he had to leave his hometown and explore new opportunities, and even his recently widowed mother encouraged him to do so. According to his autobiography, she said, "You'll have to find your own frontier, Connie. If you want to launch big ships, you'll have to go where the water is deep." Conrad planned to travel to Texas at a time when oil was making millionaires overnight. He learned that there was a bank for sale in a small town called Cisco, and convinced that investing in one of the businesses serving the oil industry could be as profitable as oil digging itself, Conrad pinned all his life savings, $5,000, to the lining of his coat and hopped aboard a train. When he arrived in Cisco, he found that the owner of the bank suddenly raised the price, making the purchase out of Conrad's reach. Here's Conrad talking about the experience courtesy of the Hilton Budapest, with links in the description.
Well, I went down to buy a bank right after the war, 1919, in a little town in Cisco, Texas. And the banker had agreed to sell me this little small bank, and then he raised me $5,000, and it made me mad.
After he decided against the bank deal, he went to the only place to stay in the town, and within a day, it would become his first hotel, the Mobley Hotel in Cisco, Texas. Here's Conrad continuing his story.
You bought your first one in what town was it?
A little town called Cisco, Texas, called the Mobley Hotel.
By the way, where'd you get your money to buy this hotel?
Well, I had a little money. I had, as I recall, about $5,000, and I got $5,000 from my mother, and I met two friends, and they put in $5,000 each, and then I went over across the street to a bank, and I borrowed the rest of the money that I needed.
Conrad was initially turned away at the front desk of the Mobley. He was told that all the rooms were sold and that he would have to come back in 8 hours. Although it was dilapidated and only had 40 rooms, he spoke to the owner, Henry Mobley, and discovered that he was renting rooms not overnight, but in 3 8-hour blocks due to the demand and to match the shifts on the oil fields. Conrad was fascinated with the concept, and after speaking with the owner, discovered that the owner was very keen to sell the property for $40,000 so that he could race off to the oil fields to make money in the fledgling oil industry. Conrad spent 3 hours going over the books and saw enormous potential in this property, and on the spot made a life-changing decision: he would become a hotelier. His decision to purchase the property was driven by the realization that there was a constant demand for lodging, which complemented his desire to provide a place where travellers could find both comfort and respect. he sent a telegram to his mother saying, "Frontier found. Water deep down here. Launched first ship in Cisco." The surprised telegrapher must have thought that Conrad had lost his mind when he commented, "Mister, you sure you know what you're saying? There ain't never been a boat in Cisco. I've lived here all my life. There ain't even any water." Connie and his partner and first manager, L.M. Drown, slept behind the front office of the Mobley so that they could rent out their beds to guests. They sat in the desk chairs and didn't sleep very well. In the middle of one night, Connie had an idea and dragged the drowsy Drown out into the lobby. "Look at all this waste space," he cried. Drown thought he was crazy, but Connie had the front desk shortened in half, opening up an area for a newsstand and tobacco shop. Next, he got rid of a potted plant and replaced it with a tiny novelty shop. He did away with the dining hall, providing space for about another 20 more tiny rooms. Thus began a lifelong crusade against waste space. Another innovation was to bring his army troop training to the hotel business. He called all 20-odd employees to a meeting and surprised them with a pep talk, uncommon for the times or for the industry. He told them 90% of Mobley's reputation is in your hands. He backed up his words with incentives and instilled pride in the workers, something that continues to this day for the award-winning Hilton Hotels. His army experience may have been the most important reason for his success in the hotel business. In the army, he had been in the Quartermaster Corps, which he was probably chosen for due to his general store experience. But the army experience would have extended beyond supplies over to laundry, to kitchen, accommodation services, all of which would have given him valuable knowledge of how to efficiently run hotels. My own father was a captain in the US Army, and the skills that he learned in the Transportation Corps also gave him unique business skills later on in life, and he shared some of these with me. Back to Connie. When one of the investors was rude to hotel guests, Connie bought him out. He paid the man double the $5,000 he had invested. Connie said it was cheap at that price and said that he'd learned that he was only as good as his associates. His good managers went on to spend their entire careers working for this caring and honest hotelier. The immediate success of the Mobley Hotel created wealth which allowed Conrad to expand, and he soon had his second property by leasing the Melba Hotel at Fort Worth. Although everyone said it needed to be torn down, with the help of an army buddy, Major Powers, he renovated the property, applied what he'd learned from the Mobley, and provided guests with plenty of soap and clean linen, and within 3 months, the safe was bulging with money. This time, he coined the term Minimax, which stood for minimum cost for maximum service. He then leased the 150-room Waldorf Hotel in Dallas and installed another Army friend as the manager. By 1921, the US had entered another recession, but Hilton's hotels remained successful, earning him the equivalent of $80,000 profit each month in today's money. Through some fantastic leveraging, which you can read about in his autobiography, Be My Guest, the $1 million Dallas Hilton was constructed and opened in 1925 to immediate success. But he had to sell the Mobley and Waldorf to help finance the Dallas Hilton. He did repurchase the Mobley in 1977, and it became a memorial museum for Hilton. Here are some snippets of Conrad lovingly compiled by the Hilton Budapest.
Conrad, have you ever walked alone in your career? You can't walk alone, especially in a business as large as mine.
We are on television coast to coast right this second, because tonight, Conrad Hilton, this is your life.
Are you now ready, Mr. Hilton, to deliver your checks?
Yes, I'm now ready. Here's a check for $57 million.
In addition to creating new jobs and new money, Hilton sees his international hotels as a contribution to world peace.
And I said, someday I'm going to buy that hotel. That's true. You have to dream.
In 1925, aged 37, he married the 19-year-old Mary Barron, and the next year their first son, Nicky, was born. The following year, their second son was born, and they named him Barron. Shortly afterwards, he acquired more Texas hotels in Waco, Abilene, Lubbock, San Angelo, Plainview, Marlin, and El Paso. In 1927, the Waco Hilton became the first hotel with air conditioning in public areas. In 1929, the stock market crashed and the US and the world entered the Great Depression. The hotel industry was decimated, and 80% of the hotels in the US went bankrupt or foreclosed. Conrad was one of the few hoteliers to survive, and he did this by scrambling and being resourceful. He closed off whole floors of some of the hotels, yanking the phones out of the rooms to save 15 cents. He and his managers skipped their paychecks and worked for just room and board. He was $500,000 in debt, and friends told him to declare bankruptcy, but he felt an obligation to those who had believed in him and invested in his dreams. Walking through one lobby, a bellboy handed him his life savings of $300 and said, "I believe in you." Here are the two men, many years later, recounting what happened.
Then a young bellboy came up to me and saved the whole thing.
I remember so well. The roof started caving in. Mr. Hilton was over $1.5 million in debt. The sheriff was going to close his hotel. However, he never lost faith.
When things looked darkest, it was Eddie Fowler here who helped give you confidence to continue. Now, how was that, Mr. Hilton?
Well, Eddie came to me one day and he said, Mr. Hilton, he said, I know what you're going through. Here's $300. He said, this is eating money for you. Take it, and I know someday you're going to pay it back.
With this money, you're able to go to Galveston, where you merge the Hilton hotels with another chain, thus saving your sinking ship.
About 2 weeks, Mr. Hilton come back to Dallas. He gave me back my $300 plus $50. And he said, Eddie, I believe we got it made. Yeah.
At the same time, when he filled up his car with gas, the station attendant told him that he'd been ordered to cut off his credit, but had filled the last 2 tanks for Conrad on his own nickel. Conrad rushed from hotel to hotel, trying to borrow money to cut expenses and do whatever it took. In 1931, his largest financier, the Moody's, saw no hope, and they were ready to foreclose, looking to take over his entire chain and leaving him in the cold with nothing. Connie met with W.L. Moody Sr. and suggested they merge Connie's chain with their own group of ailing hotels across Texas and the South. They'd created the National Hotel Company. With Connie as the manager and 1/3 owner, Moody offered him a salary of $18,000 per year, and Connie agreed, but successfully requested one more provision that if they didn't get along and split up, he would retain 1/3 of the hotels and they would get 2/3 of them. Connie paid back the bellboy and later gave him stock which paid dividends for the rest of his life. He also paid back the gas station attendant and resumed salaries for his managers on top of their room and board. He created plans to fix up the distressed hotel chain for the Moody's, which they'd operated, but every time he wanted to spend money to make improvements, the son, Shern Moody, stepped in and vetoed it. If a manager followed Connie's orders and spent some money, Shern docked him that amount of the manager's paycheck. Connie's salary was not paid. As the Depression wore on, Shern stopped paying the required payments on some of the hotels that Connie had contributed to the partnership, risking their loss. It was an untenable situation. Connie went to WL to complain, but the old man stood by his son. In 1933, when Connie tried to exercise his right to take back 1/3 of the hotels, Schön said the contract was meaningless. The Moody's sued Connie to force him out, and he countersued them, but Connie did not have the funds to fight them in a legal battle, and he knew that such a fight could drag on for years. The future had never looked so bleak. Connie got word that Schön was going to stop paying the lease on the El Paso Hilton. The landlord did not want the hotel back and told Connie he could take it over if he produced just $30,000 to cover the past due lease payment. Only a few years earlier, Connie had easily raised $1.75 million to build the hotel, but now no lender would lend him a measly $30,000. One Dallas insurance company president promised to loan him the money, but curtly backed out at the last minute. Time was running out to produce the $30,000. He got 7 people to each put up $5,000, but this time they included his suppliers, the owner of the hotel laundry company, the owner of his dairy supplier, and the representative for Blatt's beer. In return, they would keep their customer, and Connie promised each the business of the El Paso Hilton forever. That year, Connie and Mary had their 3rd son, Eric. Connie also got back the Abilene Hotel when the Moody's let it go. And then in 1934, he settled with the Moody's, getting his hotels back in Dallas, Lubbock, and Plainview. He was at last back. But his marriage was over, and although they remained amicable, he raised Nikki and Barron, whilst Mary remarried and raised Eric, though all 3 boys would eventually come to work in his hotels. The banks now trusted Hilton, and he was one of the few business people who avoided bankruptcy, so they lent him money to buy many Texan hotels, now at low prices. He had a knack for this, and it sounds like an oxymoron, but standardizing luxury. This was a new concept in the hotel industry. In 1937, he expanded out of Texas and to California. And in 1939, built the Hilton Albuquerque within his home state of New Mexico. About this time, he started thinking about another hotel. Here is his son Barron speaking about his father's dream to acquire a certain hotel.
My father was a positive thinker. He believed that if you thought positive things would result. He had a postcard on his desk of a picture of the Waldorf-Astoria. And on that postcard, he wrote, "The greatest of them all." He said to himself, one of these days, I'm going to acquire that hotel. And he did.
In 1941, Zsa Zsa Gabor was 24 years old and busy getting a divorce from Burhan Belge, the Turkish ambassador to Hungary. And she was embarking on a husband hunt that would begin with a trip to visit her sister Eva in Hollywood. Before she left Hungary, her mother advised her to marry someone in the hotel industry because a friend of hers had married a hotel director in Carmel, California, and he'd provided her with the best life in the world for her. Food is good, the accommodation is good, and the parties make for a very good life. Then by fortune, Zsa Zsa was introduced to Conrad Hilton, and when Conrad stood up, Zsa Zsa was impressed by his height, stature, tanned skin, high cheekbones, and he reminded her of cowboys in the movies. Conrad asked her for a dance, and even though he was 54, he had dance moves that seemed to be more energetic than the younger men. Conrad had trouble pronouncing Zsa Zsa, so called her Georgia. Zsa Zsa was extremely beautiful, and even crowned Miss Hungary in 1933, but had to surrender the crown and finish second when it was discovered that she was only 15 years old. In 1942, Conrad, now 55, and Zsa Zsa, 25, wed after only knowing each other for 4 months. The same day, Conrad purchased the Townhouse Hotel in LA. Conrad now turned his attention to Chicago, and especially the Stevens Hotel. At 3,000 rooms, it was the largest hotel in the world, and the most expensive at $30 million. The hotel had banquet facilities for 8,000 people and even mini golf on the roof overlooking Lake Michigan. The hotel went bankrupt after the Depression and had been sold to the military to be used for soldiers during the Second World War. Conrad acquired shares in the hotel, which would allow him to be the first in line to put a bid in to purchase the hotel when the military eventually moved out. However, when it became available, the place was left in shambles. The grand ballroom had been used as a mess hall for years, and though Conrad was first in line to purchase it, he did not even put in a bid. Another businessman, Steve Healy, a bricklayer turned hotelier, put in a successful bid, and Conrad became jealous. Healy restored the hotel to its former glory, and it became very successful. Conrad became depressed, but eventually ended up buying it from Healy and renaming it the Conrad Hilton Chicago. He also purchased two other prominent Chicago hotels at the same time, the Palmer House and the Blackstone. In 1943, he bought his first New York hotel, the Roosevelt Hotel Manhattan, named after Teddy. This purchase made Hilton the first coast-to-coast hotel chain in the US. As you're aware, he also wanted to acquire the Waldorf-Astoria, so bought stocks at 4.5 a share and made a fortune when these rose to 85 a share. Under Hilton's leadership, the Roosevelt became the first hotel to have baths in every room, to be air-conditioned, to incorporate storefronts instead of lounges to circumvent the prohibition laws, to install TVs in every room. He offered tremendous service and watched the books carefully. He was always multitasking before that was even a thing. Later that year, he partnered with Atlas Corporation and purchased the Plaza New York. Atlas's money and Hilton's hospitality skills made for a successful combination. This 20-story iconic Manhattan hotel overlooks Central Park, and for generations, the Astors, Vanderbilts, and high society had called the plaza the center of their business, political, and social activities. It was also their hotel of choice. Some lived there full-time at the hotel, and they were convinced that Conrad Hilton would destroy their hotel, and they protested every one of his attempted renovations. Conrad became upset, but then started delicately to renovate at night time. This included polishing the marble and then changing and installing new curtains. The lobby bar was reopened along with other food and beverage facilities. Soon people stopped complaining and people started loving what he was doing. He brought the plaza back to its former glory and occupancy increased from 61% to nearly 100%. In 1944, the Nazis invaded Hungary and Zsa's parents and sister were there. Zsa was under enormous stress, and even more so when a fire broke out in the Hilton mansion and Zsa lost her treasured photos, possessions, and even her dog. Coupled with these things, Conrad's Catholic Church would not recognize his marriage to Zsa, whilst Conrad's ex-wife still lived. After an event at the plaza, the two had an argument which led to the separation and eventually their divorce in 1946. 6 months after the divorce, Connie Hilton was born to Zsa. Conrad was listed as the father on the birth certificate, but said he could not have been the father because of the timing. He left nothing to either in his will. In 1946, Conrad owned the best hotels in Chicago, being the Hilton, Palmer House, and the Blackstone, and likewise New York, with the Roosevelt and the Plaza, and now turned his eye to the Mayflower in Washington, D.C. FDR had written his "Nothing to Fear but Fear Itself" speech at the Mayflower when a guest. Truman had also resided there. After purchasing the Mayflower, he now had access to the politicians, whilst New York hotels gave him access to the business people and Chicago hotels to the most influential people in the Midwest. His Texas hotels connected him to the oil barons, and Hollywood hotels to the movie industry. The company's slogan changed from Minimax to Across the Nation. In 1946, Hilton also became the first hotel company to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. But that same year, his mother passed away. Meanwhile, his sons were growing up. Nick was now 20 and had movie star looks, whilst 19-year-old Baron had an attractive intensity. Both were charming. In 1948, Hilton became an international chain with the opening of its first hotel in Puerto Rico. And a few years later, this was the birthplace of one of the world's most popular cocktails, the pina colada. It was a staple of my cocktail classes when I was teaching at the Blue Mountains Hotel School in China. It's a blended cocktail with white rum, coconut cream and pineapple juice, served in a hurricane glass and garnished with a generous slice of pineapple and a maraschino cherry. Shortly after, many other international locations became home to Hilton Hotels. However, his crown jewel was back in the US, being New York's Waldorf-Astoria. This was the hotel where royalty and celebrities alike stayed, and in 1949, after decades of dreaming, it too was Conrad's. A few years later, Conrad was spruiking the opening of the Beverly Hilton. Here's a recording of the man himself, courtesy of Conrad N. Hilton, with links in the description.
I think, Art, it's going to be the most glamorous hotel in the world.
When will you think it'll open?
About March the 1st, 1955.
Could I come for the opening?
Yes, sir. I hope you will come.
I'll be delighted.
Supposing the two of us may be very well standing together there like we are today.
In 1950, despite Conrad's protests, his eldest son Nick married 18-year-old star Elizabeth Taylor in a highly publicised ceremony in Beverly Hills. On a personal level, my late father grew up just down the road in Hollywood and would have been aware of this wedding, which some described as the event of the decade. However, the marriage only lasted several months due to Nick's gambling, drinking, heroin addiction and abusive behaviour. In 1951, Nick became the manager of the Bel Air Hotel, where he was reported to have been a good manager and was also made VP of Hilton Corporation. Yet Nick was a wild child, and here is his brother Eric with his recollections of Nick.
I think Dad would have preferred Nick to live a more stable life than the movie star type of life that Dad experienced with Zsa Zsa. But Nick was an individualist, and you just don't, you know, it's just like it is today with children. You can guide them and tell them, but they're going to do what they want to do, especially if they're strong-willed.
In the early 50s, Conrad's political connections, along with his expertise in running and expanding a hotel empire, meant that Hilton Hotels became a part of the Marshall Plan, where Hilton was supported by the US government to expand overseas, especially in post-war Europe, as part of a soft diplomacy initiative, as the Cold War had begun. Although a seasoned business tycoon, Conrad's caring form of hospitality manifested itself into a desire for world peace through prayer and conversations. This also included inviting President Eisenhower to his Mayflower Hotel in DC to host what would become the first national prayer breakfast, becoming an annual tradition for all future presidents. And during the 1950s and 1960s, Hilton was opening many hotels around the world and used coffee diplomacy. But we'll come to that later in the podcast. Dr. Megan Elias is a hospitality historian and professor who is currently writing a biography on Conrad Hilton. I'm really looking forward to this being released, but in the meantime, Dr. Elias has spoken about one particular Hilton hotel, the one at Rockefeller Center, which opened in 1963. This hotel had one of the most interesting lobbies for its time. The lobby was designed by William Pullman, the interior designer who created the eclectic modernism style. This is an American style where you fuse antiques with modern items, mixing elements from different time periods and geographic regions. One section of the lobby, named the Rue de Gourmet, was designed to look like a street with several themed restaurants, including French, Italian, and New Orleans cuisine. This was ahead of its time, but you can see influences of this idea in modern hotels, like the Venetian's restaurants along the Grand Canal, featured in our previous episode of the Hotel Leaders podcast. Dr. Elias had a eureka moment when she was studying the menus for these restaurants and began to see the same dishes appearing across the restaurants. She guessed that all the restaurants must have been serving from the same central kitchen, and a blueprint confirmed this. The Hilton so-called standardized luxury, along with this eclectic modernism, would have been further reasons why Hilton hotels became so popular so fast around the world. In 1966, the directors of Hilton Hotels asked Conrad's second eldest son, Baron, to take over as president and CEO from his father. Baron was highly successful in these roles. However, Baron's brother Nick was not doing as well, and in 1969, after many years of partying and drinking, he had a heart attack and died. Nick was only 42 years old. Baron went on to successfully serve as CEO for 30 years until handing over the reins to Steve Bollenbach in 1996. Meanwhile, in 1976, at 87 years of age, Conrad married his third and final wife, Frances. She was 60 years old, and they spent the next few years at his Bel Air mansion. From a personal perspective, Conrad did have some regrets. Here is David Senra, host of the Founders podcast, reading an excerpt of these regrets. I would strongly recommend listening to the full podcast with the link in the description.
He was, of course, proud of all his business achievements, but he did have certain regrets. He realized that with all he had accomplished, he had never had one of the most cherished things that life had to offer: fun. His greatest source of entertainment had always been trafficking in big business, making deals, courting some grand hotel, and finally acquiring her and making her his own. If only I had had just a little of whatever it is Nicky had that made his life such a good time for him, Conrad told his attorney, I think maybe I would have been happier. He shrugged his shoulders and said, well, it's too late now to worry about it, but I have to confess, I do wish I'd had more fun. If you don't mind me saying so, maybe even some more romance. Does that make me sound like an old fool? Yes, it does, he told Conrad. An old fool, just like the rest of us.
In his autobiography, Be My Guest, Conrad Hilton outlined 7 rules for hotel operations. Here they are. Number 1, each hotel has its own personality. Number 2, forecasting, knowing the seasonality of business and adjusting accordingly. Number 3, mass purchasing for the whole chain to save money. Number 4, digging for gold, finding waste space and wringing profits out of it. Number 5, training, including the use of hotel schools. Number 6, powerful sales, advertising and publicity, including to groups and conventions. Number 7, integrated reservations systems to make it easy for guests to book Hilton hotels. These 7 rules are closely linked to the code Conrad developed. Here is David Senra once again, this time reading an excerpt of this code.
His code could easily apply today, almost 100 years later, more than 100 years later now, as one for better living. As he put it at the time, direct quote from him, find your own particular talent, be big, be honest, live with enthusiasm. Don't let your possessions possess you. Don't worry about your problems. Look up to people when you can and down to no one. Don't cling to the past. Assume your full share of responsibility in the world. And finally, pray consistently and constantly.
Other advice Conrad detailed in his autobiography, which I would love to share, includes having a focus on the guest. Hilton emphasized the importance of prioritizing guest satisfaction above all else. He advised hoteliers to view their hotels through the eyes of their guests, ensuring that every aspect of guest experience is designed to meet or exceed expectations. Maintaining high standards. Hilton insisted on maintaining high standards of cleanliness, service, and maintenance. He believed that the guests should always feel they're receiving the best possible service and staying in a well-cared-for environment. Investing in your employees. Recognizing that a hotel's staff is the front line of guest interaction, Hilton advised investing in training and development programs for employees. He stressed the importance of treating staff with respect and dignity, creating a positive work environment that translates into better guest service. Embracing innovation. Hilton was a pioneer in incorporating new technologies and conveniences in his hotels. He encouraged hoteliers to stay abreast of industry trends and technological advancements that can enhance the guest experience and operational efficiency. Conrad Hilton introduced many firsts, such as air-conditioned lobbies and direct dial phones in rooms. His willingness to embrace new technologies and ideas kept his business at the forefront of the industry. He said, "Be willing to change and welcome it." In 1955, he introduced the first Hotel Central reservation system called Hilcron, where guests could reserve any Hilton by telephone, teletype, or even telegram. In 1973, this became the world's first hotel computerized reservation system. In 2014, Hilton became the first chain to scale the use of smartphones as room keys. Building a strong brand. Hilton's success was partly due to his ability to build a strong, recognizable brand. He advised hoteliers to focus on brand development and consistency, ensuring that guests know what to expect from their brand no matter where in the world they are. Understanding the business side. While hospitality is at the heart of the hotel industry, Hilton underscores the importance of solid business practices, including financial management, marketing, and strategic planning, including the expansion by carefully selecting properties and locations that aligned with his vision and the market's needs. His strategic acquisitions and development projects fueled the growth of his hotel empire. He was flexible and kept an eye out for opportunities. This is perhaps best illustrated by the time he went to Texas looking to open a bank, but ended up starting his first hotel, the Mobley, and turned $5,000 into what has become a company worth in excess of $50 billion. This adaptability allowed him to thrive in many circumstances throughout his long life. He said, "Look at every difficulty you face as an opportunity." Creating a home away from home. Hilton aimed to make his hotels feel like a home away from home for his guests. He advised hoteliers to create warm, welcoming environments that make guests feel comfortable and valued, and made it the core of his business philosophy. Giving back to the community. Hilton was a firm believer in philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. He encouraged hoteliers to engage with and give back to their local communities, building goodwill and positive relationships. He had a reputation for helping out communities in the US and around the world. The Conrad N. Hilton Foundation has donated more than $1 billion to disaster relief, housing for people experiencing homelessness, education, and infrastructure for safe drinking water in Africa, and medical aid for HIV and AIDS. Here's Conrad talking about social responsibility, strangely, through coffee.
Something that happened when we opened in Turkey. The first thing they do over there is give you a cup of coffee. And won't you have a cup of coffee? And if you drink that cup of coffee with them, they say, this commits you for 30 years of friendship. So if we can just keep on drinking that proverbial cup of coffee around the world, we think that we're helping out in the struggle for world peace.
Finally, Hilton encourages hoteliers to dream big and set ambitious goals. He believed that with hard work, perseverance, and a commitment to excellence, any dream is achievable. He said, "To accomplish big things, I am convinced you must first dream big dreams." Hilton Hotels has been featured in countless movies, including Spider-Man 3 and American Gangster, both filmed at the New York Hilton. The Bodyguard, with Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, was filmed at the Fontainebleau Hilton in Miami. In 2012, Whitney Houston passed away in her bathtub while staying at the Beverly Hilton after a drug overdose. James Bond movies like Diamonds Are Forever was filmed at the Las Vegas Hilton, and GoldenEye was filmed at the Langham Hilton, a historic hotel in London. Hilton hotels have also been featured in pop culture, including TV series, such as the third season of Mad Men, featuring Hilton Hotels and Conrad Hilton as a character played by Chelsea Ross, where the lead character, Don Draper, created a series of ad campaigns for Hilton Hotels. Here's a snippet courtesy of Fernando Cabarcos.
The average American experiences a level of luxury that belongs only to kings in most of the world. We're not chauvinists. We just have expectations. Well, now there's one word that promises the thrill of international travel with the comfort of home. Hilton. How do you say ice water in Italian? Hilton. How do you say fresh towels in Farsi? Hilton. How do you say hamburger in Japanese? Hilton.
John Lennon and Yoko Ono honeymooned in the presidential suite at the Hilton Amsterdam. On the 3rd of April 1973, the world's first cell phone call was made in front of the New York Hilton Midtown. A press conference was held at the hotel later that day to mark the milestone. There are 2 books on Hilton hotels which I would recommend. The first one we have already discussed in detail, Be My Guest. The must-read 1957 autobiography by Conrad Hilton. I would also recommend The Hiltons, The True Story of an American Dynasty by J. Randy Taraborelli, a master storyteller. Here's a snippet from Google Play Books with the link to purchase in the description.
It had long been Conrad's belief that merely being related to him should not guarantee his heirs a carefree, privileged life. He had made his money in what he called the good old-fashioned way, meaning he had earned it. A product of the Great Depression, he wanted his relatives to inherit his work ethic, not his money.
Taraborelli's book provides a comprehensive biography of the family, including the rise of Conrad Hilton in the hotel industry and his descendants, including his successor and son, Baron, Baron's son Richard, a real estate mogul, and Richard's daughter and Conrad's great-granddaughter, the famous socialite Paris Hilton. Paris has become a TV star, award-winning DJ, and businessperson in her own right. Here is Alex Berman comparing Paris to Conrad in his review of the Hiltons with the link in the description.
The final scene of the book, and this is a spoiler alert, but it's a nonfiction book, so I think that's okay. The last scene of the book is Paris Hilton walking out of a restaurant with her grandfather, Baron Hilton, who actually Donald Trump named his son Baron after Baron Hilton for a business deal, which is actually all outlined in the book. It's super interesting. But she's walking out of the restaurant, and all the paparazzi are on top of her, like taking pictures and all this stuff. She's posing for them. And the book goes into detail about how Paris Hilton's business status, her rise as the only Hilton in the new generation, except for maybe her sister that's gotten to any sort of success, is actually due to her acting exactly like Conrad. She uses her appeal and her personality in the same way that Conrad uses his prowess to get hotels early on, and she uses that to get fame later in life. And it's just very full circle.
Hilton hotels have received too many awards to mention, but here are some highlights. World's Most Valuable Hotel Brand, Best Employers for Diversity, and Best Company in the World to Work For, according to Forbes. People's Companies That Care Best Workplaces Award, Best Hotel App, and Best Hotel Website by Global Traveler. Top Green Companies in the World by Newsweek, and Global Industry Leader according to the Dow Jones Sustainable Index. Today, Hilton is worth more than $50 billion, with its brand name alone being worth almost $12 billion, making it the most valuable hotel brand name in the world. Almost double the next nearest hotel brand name being Hyatt, which is valued at approximately $6 billion. Hilton's more than 7,500 hotel properties have more than 1 million hotel rooms. Here's the current CEO and longtime employee of Hilton Hotels, Chris Nassetta, courtesy of Norges Bank Investment Management, speaking about the three things that make for a great hotel.
Number one, location. People still select, first and foremost by location. But then, of course, product quality, amenities in the product. And then last but certainly not least, because I think it is the real differentiator, is service. We have to be really proud of our ability to deliver incredible, authentic service, delivered by what is one of the best cultures on earth and recognized as such by a Great Place to Work.
For many years, its nearly 500,000 team members have consistently ranked it the best hotel chain to work for, according to Fortune. In fact, over the last 5 years, it has either been the best company to work for on the planet or in the top 3. Hilton prides itself on making work life great for all its employees with the goal of building a fully human experience at work. The hotel company is focused on its employee experience around improving wellness, professional growth, purpose, and inclusion, committing itself to a global gender parity and 25% ethnic diversity in corporate leadership by 2027. A key priority has been supporting the mental health of its employees. In the past year, Hilton started offering free counselling to staff and access to an internal hub with a variety of mental health resources meant for engaging in and normalising mental health conversations. With Hilton Flex, team members get more flexibility over when they work, which department they work in, and even how often they're paid. A program that Hilton reports has helped improve employee retention. Employees love Hilton's high compensation packages, world-class training programs including Hilton Worldwide University, and all employees who are new parents receive 2 paid weeks off, as well as 8 weeks for new mothers, while adoptive parents enjoy reimbursement of close to $10,000. Team members are united by a common purpose: to fill the earth with light and warmth of hospitality. Conrad Hilton formed that common purpose when he set out to change the world through travel and build a company that would be a force for good in the world, and famously urged everyone to think big, act big, and dream big.
It has been and continues to be our responsibility to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality.
Conrad Hilton had a clear and ambitious vision for his business. He saw the potential of the hotel industry early on and worked relentlessly to turn his vision into reality, transforming the hospitality landscape. He passed away in 1979, aged 91, and even 45 years later, he remains the gold standard for aspiring hotel managers and hotel owners alike. Thank you for joining today's episode. I hope you were inspired, amazed, and enlightened as we unlocked the secrets of the hotel industry's most iconic leaders and iconic hotels. If you had a wonderful time, the best way to say thank you is to subscribe so that you never miss our monthly episodes. If you love showers in luxury hotels, please check out our tech startup at showeraway.com, where we hope one day to provide people on day trips access to the very best hotel showers in the world. Farewell, until the next time you check in to the Hotel Leaders Podcast.